I play a lot of Scarlet. If you've watched some of my older videos, you're probably not surprised by that revelation since I use a lot of Scarlet footage in them. I really enjoy her depth as a character, and exploring her has taken a lot of effort and time. I've wanted to write a Scarlet guide for a while, but it's hard to make it digestible and comprehensive. Some of my scripts are so long, I decided to use them as a backdrop to hurt your eyes during this video. My current plan is to try to break her talent guide into several videos. Today I'm just going to talk about her starting talents, and if this goes well, maybe I'll try to let the rest of the zoo in my brain out. I had a hard time beating Nightmare with distant explosions when I started Ravenswatch. It has a few problems. First, it doesn't give you a strong starting bonus like Shadow Strikes and Devourer. Yes, your special does more damage, but it's a button on a 10-second cooldown, leaving you twiddling your thumbs for a while. With some combinations of enemies, you end up having to kite for a very long time. I find that my DE builds tend to miss a few camps and not get as much XP by the end of Chapter 1 as my other starting talents. Something mildly infuriating about distant explosions is that it allows you to play very safely, so even if you're really underscaled, you might still be able to eke out little victories by the skin of your teeth. This means that the losing portion of a run can drag on for 5 or more minutes before you encounter an enemy that you can't disengage from, like a boss fight. By the way, be careful with your bomb. You can throw it into terrain where it will explode harmlessly. Funnily enough, it'll sometimes bounce off walls and explode on the ground like normal, but sometimes it gets stuck. The inconsistency is pretty frustrating. Another tricky thing with distant explosions is that it changes Scarlet's base moveset. The switch to leap in wolf form is particularly disorienting due to the extra movement it gives you. This is also one of the most fun things about distant explosions, but it can be a little confusing. On the positive side, DE synergizes nicely with a ton of other talents and items. If you manage to scale in the early game, it can turn into one of Scarlet's chillest builds in the mid to late game. Basically, you just walk up, spam bombs, and then pick up the loot. Overall, distant explosions has grown on me, but I don't think it's very beginner friendly, particularly at Nightmare difficulty. Devour is a lot of fun once you get enough bonus damage from items or talents. Getting resets and power spamming down hordes of enemies is very satisfying. Additionally, the extra damage from the quest is a significant boost, particularly in the early game. Unlike distant explosions, Devourer feels more proactive and impactful even without perfect talent rolls. However, Devourer is a little deceptive in practice, particularly at Nightmare difficulty. Getting a kill with a single power is less and less likely as enemies get progressively stronger. Also, even when you get a reset, remember that a lot of the damage of the power comes from combo stacks, and combo stacks come from chaining attacks, so it isn't optimal to use the reset until you get several attacks off. The inherent unreliability of Devour before you upgrade it to Legendary is also suspect. Power gives you intangibility frames, but if you miss a reset, you might find yourself hung out to dry. Another problem is that the Devour quest is pretty time and attention intensive, and you can't start it until you're in wolf form. This means that you receive no buffs for your first several minutes of play, negatively impacting your start. The first few minutes of the run are very important, and Devourer doesn't help them at all. Overall, my take is that it's fun, it's pretty decent, but not top tier. The first time you unlocked and read Shapeshifter, you probably got really excited. Scarlet's forced transformations from human to wolf and vice versa are annoying as a new player since it interrupts what you were doing and messes with your muscle memory as you adjust to her transformed abilities. Shapeshifter probably looked like an opportunity to simplify your play by focusing on just her human or wolf form. In practice, however, Shapeshifter is pretty challenging. It comes with no extra damage and reduces your base HP, making you very fragile. This is particularly noticeable in matchups with weak enemies that come in groups like ghouls and spiderlings. Since you're almost guaranteed to take damage, Shapeshifter tends to struggle against them. A perceived advantage of shifting forms at will is that human form and wolf form tend to outperform each other on certain camps. For example, human form is generally better against pig camps and treant camps, since those enemies have large AoE attacks that wolf struggles to dodge. Whereas wolf form is better at taking up and fighting ghouls, which tend to get damage on human form consistently. In practice, however, Shapeshifter's advantage is minimal. Against ghoul camps, the wolf form's lower total HP is punishing, and without good execution you can get overwhelmed. Meanwhile, against pigs, one reason human form feels comparatively good is that pigs will explode and injure or kill other pigs. If you fight pigs during the day as Shapeshifter, you aren't getting any advantage based on your starting talent, and if you're fighting them at night, the fight is longer than normal because they don't explode. Treants have a similar problem since they spawn spiderlings at night. Overall, Shapeshifter doesn't get nearly as much value from these matchups as you might expect. The main strength of Shapeshifter is that wolf abilities and human abilities are on separate cooldowns. The right play style is to start a fight, use all your abilities in your current form, and then switch and cycle the rest of your cooldowns. This can be particularly impressive after you unlock ultimates, and Shapeshifter becomes an absolute beast as the game goes on. But in the early phases of the game, it's very tricky and requires a lot of ability juggling. An interesting behavior of Shapeshifter is that it gives Scarlet a true invulnerability frame in her kit when she transforms, which is stronger than the intangibility frames on her power, cloak, or leap. While many abilities in Ravenswatch give a few frames of intangibility, there aren't many that give invulnerability. Invulnerability works on everything as far as I've seen, including the AoE divide attack on the first boss or the red AoE from Elite Lumbering Treants. This is cool, but honestly, it's easier to learn to avoid the intangibility piercing attacks in the game than to wait for the right moment to pop your trait. Also, since the trait has a 30-second cooldown and is mostly used to cycle your other cooldowns, using it to dodge is a tricky mechanical reflex to train and rely on. Future Febreze update. The invulnerability frame looks like it was patched out. I was running a couple tests earlier to grab footage, and at first I thought I was mistiming it, but apparently not. This makes the talent more consistent with the rest of the hero pool, though it's kind of a shame since it was funny. Anyway, don't try to dodge red AoE attacks with Shapeshift anymore, it doesn't end well. To wrap up Shapeshifter, it has a very passionate fan base, and deservedly so, but has a weak start, and requires a lot of effort to learn and to do well with. I personally have never really fallen in love with it. It definitely adds flavor to the character and has a high skill ceiling. If you really enjoy Scarlet and have a lot of hours on her, you'll probably enjoy diving more deeply into Shapeshifter. On the other hand, if you're learning the game on Scarlet, I would stay away from it on Nightmare difficulty until you've gotten comfortable with other talents. This brings me to what I regard as the best Scarlet starting talent, Shadow Strikes. Shadow Strikes is by far Scarlet's best starting talent in the early game. For each stack you get on the quest, you get an additional crit chance of 1%. Stacks are acquired in your human form, so unlike Devourer, you can start stacking immediately without waiting for the day-night cycle. Also, because you have a 100% crit chance on your first power or attack after Cloak, the extra crit has an immediate synergy with your build. If you aren't familiar with how critical damage works in Ravenswatch, I put together a video that explains more of the math behind it, which you can check out via the link. The basic idea is that increased crit chance rolls over as increased crit damage whenever your crit chance exceeds 100%. The stacking quest for Shadow Strikes gives a maximum of 25% crit chance and 35% crit damage, with Legendary unlocked. Prior to the Avalon update, playing around this was the most common way to build Scarlet. Take talents like Energy and Pyromania, buy the old crit consumables from the Sandman's shop, and then you're pretty much set. Now, crit consumables have been removed from the shop, and it's hard to justify picking crit at Grimoires given how strong Leprechaun Coin is, but we also get the addition of several crit items to the game, such as Eternal Rose and the collection effects of Ogre's Blood, Jack of Diamonds, and King of Clubs. Crit builds on Scarlet are still very viable, and I expect we'll see a resurgency of them if Leprechaun Coin is toned down. Even if you aren't trying for the crit build, however, Shadow Strike still holds up very well on its own. Mathematically, it's just a lot of damage without requiring a ton of effort and thought to play around. The behavior the quest incentivizes is one that you should already be trying to do. Hit as many targets as you can with your Swift Strike Cloak combo after farming up your combo stacks. It's a great talent to learn with, particularly since it won't give you any habits to make learning other talents confusing. There's not a whole lot more to say about this talent. It has a good start, is relatively easy, and your damage ceiling is very, very high. That's all for now. Let me know if I've missed anything, if there are any other talents for Scarlet you have questions about. See you next time.